You kissed me that night, and you don't even remember. He took her innocence and vanished. Now, 3 years later, he was the only man who could save her son.
Welcome to Mafia Love Story, where passion meets the power. If you crave steamy romance mixed with intense crime thriller drama, you're in the right place. Ready to get hooked on your next obsession? Don't forget to like this story, subscribe for the next chapter, and tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get dangerous.
You kissed me that night, and you don't even remember. He took her innocence and vanished. Now, 3 years later, he was the only man who could save her son. Soul glimmered beneath the drizzle, lights reflecting off wet asphalt like broken promises. Tiaralua Deji clutched her worn phone tightly as her little boy coughed beside her. Her savings were gone. Her son hadn't eaten all day. She had called everyone she knew, and no one picked up. In desperation, she scrolled through her contacts and found a number she thought belonged to a charity worker she once met at the hospital. Her fingers trembled as she typed. "Please, sir, I'll pay you back. My son hasn't eaten today." She sent it, not knowing that single message would change everything. Across the city, high above Seoul's skyline, a man stared out the window of a glass tower. Kim Tae-yoon, ruthless CEO of Tae-yoon Holdings, silent ruler of Korea's largest underground empire. A man whose name alone made others bow. He was reviewing the day's reports when his phone buzzed. One unknown number. One message. He almost ignored it until his eyes caught the words, "My son hasn't eaten today." He read it again and again. Something in that message reached into a part of him he thought had died long ago. It wasn't the plea for help that unsettled him. It was the voice in the words. Soft, desperate, familiar. He remembered that voice. He remembered that night. Rain had fallen just like this 3 years ago when he met a woman he couldn't forget. She'd been lost, alone, her laughter slurred with wine and sadness. He had taken her hand, offered to walk her home. But somewhere between the streets and the silence of his hotel room, comfort turned into fire. He never asked her name. By morning, she was gone. Or maybe he was. He'd left before she could open her eyes, thinking it was better that way. He never imagined he'd hear her again. Tae-yoon leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. He ordered his men to trace the number. Minutes later, the reply came. A name he didn't recognize, a neighborhood he'd never been to. He told them to bring her to him. That night, Tiara walked home through dimly lit streets, holding her son's tiny backpack. She was thinking about what she would cook with the little rice left in the jar. When a black car slowed beside her, 2 men in dark suits stepped out. One called her name. The next moment, the world spun. A hand, a sharp scent, and then darkness. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was light reflecting off marble floors. The air smelled of expensive cologne and cold fear. A man stood by the window, his back to her. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. He turned, and in that single moment, time stopped. Her breath caught in her chest. His eyes widened. Shock, disbelief, something deeper. He took a step forward and she flinched. For a moment, neither spoke. And then, with a voice low and steady, he said the words that made her heart falter. "It's you." Memories came flooding back. The rain, the warmth of his hands, the night she had tried to forget. But she didn't understand why she was here or how he even knew her. All she could think of was Minjin, her son, probably crying for her right now. He asked her questions she didn't understand. "Who told you to message me? Are you working for someone?" His voice was cold, like ice pressed against her skin. She shook her head, terrified, explaining that she had sent the message by mistake, that she was only a mother trying to feed her child. But as she spoke, something changed in his expression. Curiosity softened into something else. Realization. He asked how old her son was. 3, she whispered. He froze. The number struck like lightning. He turned to his assistant outside the room, ordering something she couldn't hear. Minutes passed like hours until the man returned and handed him a small envelope. He read it in silence, his face unreadable. Then his eyes lifted to hers, darker than before, heavier, almost broken. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Min-jin is my son." The words cut through the air, leaving only silence behind. Tiara's world tilted. She thought she had misheard him, but his expression didn't waver. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears. And in that breathless space between disbelief and truth, both of them realized the night they had tried to forget had come back for them. Not as memory, but as blood. The room was quiet after his words, but Tiara could feel the sound of her heartbeat echoing against the walls. He said it so easily, as if her world hadn't just tilted out of place. "Minjan is my son." She wanted to laugh, to scream, to call him a liar. But when she looked at him, she saw no trace of deception, only something raw, deep, and dangerous. He tried to explain, but she couldn't hear it. The words bounced off the fear building in her chest. All she could think was that she needed to leave, to take her son and run far from this man whose eyes carried storms. She rose from the chair, but 2 men stepped in front of the door. Taeyeon's voice cut through the silence, commanding but low. He wasn't threatening her, not yet, but every line in his face said she wasn't going anywhere until he understood the truth. Hours later, he ordered her to be taken to his penthouse. The drive was silent. The city lights blurred by like fragments of memory she couldn't hold on to. When they arrived, she was shown into a vast glass apartment overlooking Seoul. It was too beautiful, too empty, too quiet. A place where a man could hide his sins behind luxury. He came to her, standing across the room like a shadow she couldn't touch. He told her everything, how he remembered the night, how he'd looked for her once but never found her. Tiara didn't believe him. She accused him of lying, of playing with her pain. When he tried to offer her money, she slapped it out of his hand. Her pride was all she had left, and she wouldn't sell it, not even for survival. She told him she wanted nothing from him, no help, no protection, no father for her child. But fate had other plans. That night, while she packed her few belongings in her small apartment, the sound of shattering glass ripped through the air. Men in masks flooded in, rough hands, the glint of knives, the smell of gunpowder. They weren't there to rob her. They were looking for her. And they spoke a name she recognized, Tae-yun. She screamed for her son. Minjin cried, terrified. Then a door burst open, and through the chaos, he appeared. Kim Tae-yun, drenched from the rain, his eyes blazing with fury. He moved like a storm, fast, silent, deadly. In minutes, the attackers were gone, their blood mixing with the rain outside. He didn't speak as he carried her and Minjun out. She wanted to protest, but her voice broke. In that moment, fear outweighed pride. At his mansion, the night fell heavy with silence. Minjun was asleep, his tiny fingers curled around a blanket. Tiara sat on the couch, exhausted, trembling. Tae-yun came with a small first aid kit and his hands steady as he cleaned a cut on her arm. Neither of them spoke for a long time. When she finally did, her words came sharp as glass. She told him he lived like the world owed him fear. He smiled, not with warmth, but with bitterness. "Fear keeps me alive," he said. She met his gaze. "Maybe that's why you're already dead inside." The air thickened, his eyes darkened. Something in him cracked. The calm, the control, the distance he used as armor. He leaned closer, his voice low, dangerous. "Then stop looking at me like you want to wake me up." Her breath caught, not from fear, but from something else. A pull she hated, a reminder of that night when rain had fallen and names didn't matter. But before the moment could break them both, a phone buzzed on the table. He turned away, answering it with the cold tone of a man who'd lived too long with enemies. When he hung up, his expression had changed, colder, heavier. A message had arrived. It read, "She's not just a woman from your past. She's the key to your downfall." He didn't show her the phone. He just stood there for a long time, staring at her as if he couldn't decide whether to protect her or destroy her. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, two hearts beat with the same rhythm, one from fear, one from something dangerously close to love. By morning, Seoul was quiet again, but inside Tae-yun's mansion, the air felt heavy. Tiara had barely slept. Every creak in the hall, every whisper of the rain against the glass made her heart race. She still couldn't believe where she was, trapped inside the home of a man who claimed to be her son's father, a man whose world was built on secrets and blood. And yet, when she watched him from across the room, pouring himself a cup of coffee in silence, something inside her wavered. He looked different now, less like a stranger, more like a memory she had tried to bury. Min-jun's laughter broke through the tension. He ran into the room, his small hands reaching up toward the man he'd only met yesterday. Tae-yun froze, then slowly bent down. For the first time in years, the corners of his mouth softened into a quiet smile. It was hesitant, unsure, but it was real. And in that fragile moment, Tiara saw a glimpse of the man he might have been, before power hardened him. Days passed, and she stayed, not by choice, but because danger waited outside. He insisted it was for protection, but she could feel the invisible walls closing in. Everywhere she went, there were men watching. Every door she touched was locked. Freedom was a word she could only dream of. Still, something unexpected began to shift between them. Sometimes she'd find him standing by the window late at night, staring into the city lights. Other times, he'd find her reading to Minjun in the garden, her laughter soft against the wind. Their eyes would meet, and for a moment, neither of them could look away. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something dangerous, longing wrapped in silence. To distract herself, Tiara began helping out at his art foundation, the one he said was for children, for hope, for second chances. She believed him at first, until one evening she stayed behind after everyone left. The building was quiet, the lights dim. She wandered into his private study, searching for a file, when she found it. A hidden drawer filled with documents, coded names, bank transfers, and shipments that had nothing to do with art. The truth hit her like cold water. It wasn't a charity. It was a front. The foundation was laundering Mafia money, and the man she had started to trust was nothing more than a criminal wearing a suit. She confronted him that night. Her hands shook. Her voice cracked, but she spoke anyway. She told him she knew what he was. He didn't deny it. He only looked at her with quiet defiance, the kind that said he'd stopped apologizing for who he was a long time ago. He stepped closer, and for a second she thought he would hurt her. Instead, his voice came low, controlled. He told her he built an empire from blood, and he wouldn't destroy it for anyone. Then he asked if she really wanted to pretend she wasn't tempted by it, by the protection, the power, the danger. She pushed him away, furious, but his hand caught her wrist before she could leave. Her heart pounded. His breath was close. Their anger met like fire against steel. And in that fire, something else sparked, something neither of them wanted to name. Their eyes locked. The space between them burned. Then, a sound broke it, a sharp, heavy knock on the door. They froze. The tension shattered. Another knock, louder this time. Taeyeon turned toward the sound, his entire body tensing. From the other side, a voice called out, "Police, open up." But something in that voice didn't feel right. Too steady, too familiar. Tiara's stomach twisted as he moved toward the door. He told her to stay behind him. He opened it slowly. Standing there was a man dressed like an officer, but his eyes betrayed him, calm, predatory, cold. Han Dae-sek, a name that carried the weight of old betrayals and blood debts. He smiled faintly, stepping into the room as if he owned it. Behind him, men in dark coats lingered like shadows. The air grew thick with danger. Taeyeon's voice was calm, but his hand slid toward his gun. Tiara could feel the shift, the fragile piece of the mansion cracking like glass. This was no police visit. This was a warning. And as Dae-sek's gaze flicked toward her, something in it sent a chill down her spine. He knew who she was, and worse, he knew what he meant to Taeyeon. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Inside, the past was standing at the door, dressed as law. And in that moment, Tiara realized she was no longer caught between fear and survival. She was caught between love and destruction.